Yeah, excellent. Because I was actually, that's a nice one, case, because that was my second question. Is that now we have these technologies at our disposal, and they've been ingrained in our society. It's not something that because it's a crisis now we're using technology that is designed. It's something we already had, but all of a sudden it has become more important. And because of this technology, it allows people to exchange information initially, because we can all like contrast with all the web systems. Now everybody can share information, post things, but we also can find each other. We can connect, and we can get organized, even if we're not in the same place.
Hmm.
So is that really something that is tied to this specific crisis, or do we see that everywhere? Because I think that in this crisis specifically, because now it affected everyone and everyone is staying at home. It's not just a few people in a central place, that this becomes much more important. But at the same time, there's also a danger for people who are not on social media or not, let's say, IT savvy. There is this digital
Hmm.
divide.
That's
So
true.
how do we see that this technology, is that really a catalyst? What role does it play in this emergency from a technology point of view? Is that really the push, and how has it influenced that people get organized in this crisis? Maybe Martijn, I can start with you with this question.
Sure. I'm not a sociologist, but what I can see from just personal experience over the past few weeks and also before that, I do have the feeling that social media is both a blessing and a danger. It's a blessing because, as Kay said, it really helps to uphold that
Projects
social
that they are
connection
searching.
in times where physical connections are impossible, such as now. But what also is happening is that it stimulates polarization of social grouping. People who are less tech savvy will drop out of these social media channels. People who have a different background will not relate to conversations. People who are say not don't have the time to sit down or are not. Are not willing to take the time to sit down and engage in social media conversations will not just join in. So I struggle to say that it's a full replacement of normal human contact. And that's something that might provide us with lessons in a few weeks when this crisis is over. Is what has been the actual worth of social media as a social conduit. But that's something that sociologists could probably explain better than I can.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because I'm also wondering if this doesn't create a blind spot, because I for two things, and one is for people who want to help. So I'll come back to you in a moment for that, to you, Cindy. But to Case, I would like to ask: is it also that because on social media it's easy for us to identify activities, to identify information, it's much harder for people to look for information that isn't as easy as findable. So is there a
Hmm.
risk of misrepresentation, because we easily gravitate to digital systems, whether it's social media or some other system, say,
It's
hey,
true.
this is what's going on, but a lot of
Yeah.
initiatives might not be online, or might not be visible, not organized through social media, and we might miss them if we rely on it too much for our situational awareness. Case.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Actually, if I start teaching about disaster management or crisis management, I always explain to the students in social science why crises are interesting, because they make what we take for granted, they make that visible. So what the crisis now, the corona crisis, is making visible, well, many, many things. But when we talk about social media, indeed, social media is an important part of our social life. It shows that we are connected. It shows that we are living in a global world, or global village, if you may. But also that social media, as any networks, can have excluding effects. So not everyone is connected. And you have seen that in crisis response and crisis management. For example, Kenny, you and I did a study in Nepal where you could see that the digital have-nots got less attention if only you would look at the social media reports of a need or needs assessment. So coming back to the remark that Martijn is making. So where are the needs? Okay, there is self-report on social media, but what if you are not connected? So we have to be careful. We can celebrate and embrace social media 100%, but make sure that there are always people who are excluded, not connected, falling behind, vulnerable. So that is it's not a rose garden. So we have to be on top of that.
Yeah, it's exactly. So it's with any digital system, it's also, especially in crisis, it's important to think about the people who are not represented, because especially now we have a lot of people who might be severely affected, like elderly or people who are left a bit digitally behind or not as well connected. They are the most vulnerable in this crisis.
Yes.
But there's another group that is using social media a lot. In the last weeks, Cindy, I've seen people organize everything on social media. It's, people who want to help, who want to organize, start, even if social activities like clapping, but also for the healthcare providers, people who organize like doing groceries, all these things. So what does that social media mean in terms for volunteers and being able to participate in the crisis response here? How does that relate to people volunteering? Does social media really make it easier for people, or does it attract a certain group of people?
Can we zoom out for a little? Because
sure.
I think one of the biggest issues right now is social distance, and which means that most activities that are taking place are online. And that does not necessarily meet the needs of the people, because the needs of the people are physical, closeness, togetherness. So we see a push on the social platforms because it seems to be the only available thing right now. So there's an extra incentive to do this socially and do this online, because we're very scared. Most of us are very, very scared to catch corona. We think everyone will die, because that's what Facebook tells us. And we don't know how to interact with each other on a physical basis in this crisis, in this situation. So we see a pull from every volunteer from within the field. Organizations are pulling back their volunteers, and we're pushing everything on an online version. But it doesn't meet the needs. And you said the elderly are the most affected. I really, really, really disagree. And that's because a lot of people that at a certain age, they have already social distances as in every part of their life. We call it loneliness, we call it social isolation, but they're used to this situation. This is the reality of their life as it has been in the last couple of years. So they're doing actually really well because they already know how to deal with this. It's you and me. We don't know what to do. It drives us crazy. This is a new reality for every one of us. And the push we see in people trying to help is also an escape from our own anxiety. So we kind of want to push and help everyone because we're kind of scared ourselves. So there's tremendous need for help. We see it in every crisis, of course, but it also tells us a lot about ourselves. We kind of get frustrated of being at home. So social media, it's a very good way of helping, but it's not enough. It's not going to be enough. And it enhances the physical, the personal distance more than anything else, I think. Yeah. So what do we see with the volunteers? They ask this question of their organizations, the ones that are in traditional organizations, tell their organizations, please, this social part is not going to be enough. What can I do? How can I see my clients without risk for myself? And organizations, they don't have the answers yet. I think that's kind of... sorry, go ahead.
No, it's an excellent point. So to clarify, I meant in terms of vulnerability to the disease itself for elderly. But you're right, the effects are throughout our society. And indeed, a lot of people need to adapt. We talked before in another lecture about that, physically online interaction is still different than even if you would be in a classroom for teachers. It's a flat screen you're looking at. You're missing a lot of nonverbal. But I also agree that we tend to look at social media as for a lot of people as an opportunity to start volunteering. But I appreciate your point saying for people who are volunteering, where previously they used to do it more in a physical environment, now they have to make that transition to a digital one, and that can be a hard one. So it's not only an opportunity for people to start volunteering in a digital or remote way, or organize things remotely, but also a transition for traditional volunteers to move to this digital environment, which can be challenging. And that's actually a nice point to